Hey everyone, welcome back to the Board Game Spotlight. Today we're going to look at Mutants the card game from Lucky Duck Games. It's for 2 to 4 players and it plays in about 45 to 60 minutes. So let's take it to the table and I'm going to tell you about it. So today we've set up Mutants the card game in a 2-player setup. So we have blue versus yellow, and I've set up the 2 different factions opposite each other. Now Mutants the card game is a all-out power struggle for victory points along this power track. And we're playing with 2 different factions in the game today. So we have the Vicious Cycle and the Mosh Pit. Now it's important to note that each of the factions in the game are completely asymmetric. So each player is going to have their own personal market of cards that they can genetically research. Now the basic deck, they're all the same. So there are 2 copies of each of the basic cards in each of the decks. And what these cards allow players to do is to not only have abilities that they can activate, but you're also going to use these genetic icons to research different genetic warriors and bring them into your deck. The game is very streamlined. It's very easy to follow what's going on. Essentially what you're trying to do over 5 rounds is score the most victory points. There is a victory point track that is going to score victory points based on your current location on the power track at the end of a round. Additionally, you're going to score victory points for any cards that you freeze in your freeze zone at the end of the game. So depending on the number of players in the game, first place is always going to score the larger number, last place is going to score 0 points, and anyone that's in between is going to score the lower number. So if we are playing a 3-player game, it would be 4, 2, and 0. If we are playing a 4-player game, it would be 4, 2, 2, and 0. So it depends on where you're at. And again, players are going to gain power throughout the game, and they're going to continually shift places on this board until the round is over. Whoever's at the top is going to win the power struggle. So in this 2-player game, we're going to show you some of the functions of the cards and explain exactly how the game flows. So at the beginning of the game, you're not going to have anything on your tableau, so we're going to go ahead and progress to a couple turns into the game so you can see the sequence of play. So we're going to dive into a game that's in progress to show you how a turn would work. So if we're the active player here, we have a zombie and a warrior. What you're going to need to do is choose where this card goes. Your active card is going to need to slide to the left or the right. If it slides to the left, this card would move down into your discard pile. Now it's important to note that these cards all have a top ability and a bottom ability. Now, when you play a card, if it has this symbol, that is a deploy action. So if we were to deploy the robot, let's put the zombie to the right, we deploy our robot, we get to draw and then discard a card. So we immediately draw a card, and then from our hand, we have to decide which of these we want to discard. So we could discard the demon. We would then move over to our opponent, who would get an opportunity to play a card. So we could play this zombie for 2 power. So we would slide the demon over, play this. Blue is going to gain 2 power. And the way this works is you stack on top of a player, but then any excess is going to bump that other player down a step. So in this case, we went up 2 power. So we would go 1 on top, and then the second power is actually going to knock our opponent down. When you are leading the power track, any power that you gain continues to knock your opponent further down the track. So you can make it a lot harder for them to come back and take it from you. It is very possible that they could, depending on the warriors that they breed in the game. So let's talk about breeding warriors. When you breed a card, you need to discard the same 2 genetic icons. So in this case, we have an alien and a zombie, and that is going to let us breed the Pyrothrope. Now what happens is, when you breed, this card immediately gets deployed. So before you do that, you have to first choose one of your left or right mutants to leave your tableau. So in this case, we could choose to have the zombie leave, and we would activate this effect, or we could have the warrior leave. So let's choose the warrior because they have an attack ability. When this ability occurs, players dominating you knock down the mutant in the same spot. Now let's talk about knocking down and attacking your opponents. This is the left, which means this is your opponent's left. If the warrior were to leave, we would choose our opponent. The same mutant in the spot would get knocked down, which means it is flipped over, and that mutant will not get to activate or resolve its leave ability. However, there's a caveat, because our opponent has the demon in play, which has a block effect. So whenever they're attacked, they must use this ability. They gain 1 power and they knock this mutant down. What that does is they were able to stop that attack on their player board. They would gain a power, which is going to push us further down the track. So that all happened just from the leave ability. So then we would still get to deploy our mutants. So let's discard and breed the Pyrothrope, which immediately goes into our active mutant slot. Our opponent gains -1 power, and that is our turn. Our opponent would then get a chance. They would move their zombie. Because this is knocked down, they'll want to get rid of this. So we'll move the zombie over, and they are going to play their beast. Now the beast is going to allow them to discard any 2 cards to gain a mutant into your hand. So they could discard both of these cards to take any of their mutants into their hand. It basically lets you bypass having the exact mutant genetic code in order to find it. So we're going to grab the Pit Lord and put it into our hand. Going back over to our last card, we have the beast. We don't have cards to discard to it. So what we could do is we could incubate. So when you incubate, you discard any card from your hand. It's a little bit of a slower process. So we would then get to choose any of these face-up cards. And I like the Buffalo, so we're going to incubate this. And it goes over here in the incubate slot. Now what that means is at the end of the round, this card is going to top deck. You're going to draw this card. It's going to go to the top of your deck. You're going to have the opportunity to immediately play it. So that was our turn. Because we did not deploy anything, we don't have anything that moves left or right. There's nothing that needs to go down. So then we go over to the next player who has their Pit Lord left. And you'll notice there is an infinity symbol. This is an ongoing bonus. While this card is active in your left or right area, it's going to give you an ability that you can utilize. So this ability is going to allow us to activate not only the deploy abilities, but also our leave abilities. So before we play the Pit Lord, we need to choose one of these cards to move down. Let's choose the zombie because they have a coal ability that we can freeze this mutant. When you freeze a mutant, you're going to score victory points in the top right corner. So this card is going to be removed from our deck and placed in our freeze zone. And we're going to move the beast over. I want to note that any cards in your personal market, they are always face up. So the top card is always available for you and your opponents to see what you have. Any cards in your freeze zone, this is all secret information because you're going to be able to take a look at the power track and figure out how many victory points players have. But the secrecy of your frozen cards is very important to kind of that tense, are you going to win? Are you going to be able to pull it off part of it? Because you could be in maybe second or third, have a lot of points in your freeze zone and still pull off the win. So we're going to go ahead and deploy our Pit Lord, but it does not have a deploy effect. So that is the end of the round. At that point, you would then decide who has the most points. Blue would gain 4, yellow scores none, and we move into the next round. So after we give out the victory points here on the track, whoever has the least amount is going to be highest on the power track, and whoever has the most prestige points is going to be second, but they're going to be the first player. So then you're going to need to draw a hand of 6 new cards. Well, remember we incubated this Buffalo, which means that it's going to go into our hand. We have 6 cards left to draw, so we're going to draw the remainder. Over here, we also have 6 cards to draw. But had we needed to draw more cards, had either player needed a 6th card to draw, what you're going to do is you're going to shuffle your discard pile. But before you do that, you have to choose one of these cards to freeze. So that also gives you another included option of gaining victory points, again, for your frozen cards, and also culling your deck of cards that you don't need any longer. It's an easier way of getting to your stronger warriors. It's an easy way of getting rid of cards that you feel like you no longer need, and it's a great way of streamlining your deck. So when you reshuffle to draw your deck, you're going to freeze one card. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be a basic, it could be a genetic warrior, because some of these genetic warriors are going to have variable powers that are going to give them victory points for the symbol that is in the frozen zone. So Nebulon is going to give an additional victory point for each of these demons inside the frozen zone. So that's important to keep an eye on. Players are going to continue to go through that progress of the game, moving cards down on this conveyor belt, playing cards, breeding cards, and activating them, incubating them until the game is over at the end of the 5th round. You're going to total up your prestige points from the power track. You're going to total up the prestige points from any cards in your frozen zone, and the player who has the most is going to be declared the winner. Mutants is an incredibly engaging, extremely unique deck builder. In fact, there's no deck builder I've ever played that feels like this. This is leading the edge. This is the next evolution of deck builders, and I can't wait to play this more. If you want to know more about this game, if it looks interesting to you, take a look at the description below for a link to their Kickstarter campaign. This has been Derek with the Board Game Spotlight, and this has been your preview of Mutants, the card game.